It's just past 5 p.m. in India. Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I am Tanvi Taneja. And for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Good afternoon, Ollie.
Hello, Tanvi. It's 11:30 a.m. here in London, 12:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up in the next half hour, EU aid to Ukraine, France's government attempts to ease farmer protests, and a rejection of an amnesty bill for Spain's separatist parties. Lots more besides. First, the headlines.
Washington weighs its response to the killing of American servicemen by Iran-aligned militia in Jordan. Iran warns of decisive response to any attack. European Union leaders to propose annual debates on a planned €50 billion aid package for Ukraine in Brussels today.
Ukraine needs more ammunition. There is a big imbalance on the fire capacity from one side and the other.
Former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife sentenced to 14 years in prison on charges of illegally selling state gifts. And Indian Parliament's budget session begins with President's address to the joint sitting of both houses. President Murmu lauds work done by the Modi government in the last 10 years. Our first news from West Asia. Israeli forces on Wednesday continued their military operations against Hamas terrorists in northern and southern regions of the Gaza Strip. As per the Israeli forces, at least 25 Hamas terrorists and 3 Israeli soldiers were killed in the fighting in Gaza. This comes amidst the terror group Hamas stating that it is studying a new proposal for a ceasefire. The proposed peace initiative includes the release of Israeli hostages in Gaza and appears to be the most serious peace initiative since the Israel-Hamas conflict began. UN Secretary General Antonio Gutteres convened a meeting with 35 member states and the European Union on Tuesday amid fears of funding shortages. This comes after Israel accused 12 of UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, UNRWA's Gaza employees, of their involvement in the October 7th attacks, causing several countries to suspend their funding to the agency. A United Nations Relief and Works Agency spokesperson warned that the agency would be unable to sustain operations beyond February without the resumed funding. More than 10 countries, including major donors like the United States, have suspended their contributions to the agency. Israeli government spokesperson said that at least 13 United Nations Relief and Works Agency employees were actively involved in the October 7th Hamas attack on Israel. This levy revealed some parts of an Israeli intelligence dossier that prompted a cascade of countries to halt their funds for the UN Palestinian Aid Agency.
In light of the abundant evidence of UNRWA's complicity with Hamas and its failures to distribute aid to civilians who need it, Israel calls for the following. 1. The defunding of UNRWA. Foreign Minister Israel Katz has called for UNRWA to be replaced with agencies dedicated to genuine peace and development. 2. The resignation or dismissal of UNRWA's leadership and a thorough investigation of what they knew about its ties with Hamas. There must be accountability for this cover-up, and UNRWA's leadership must be held accountable. And 3. Consistent with his 3D vision for peace, requiring the destruction of Hamas and demilitarization of Gaza, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has spoken forcefully of the need for de-radicalization in Gaza. UNRWA is part of the problem, not part of the solution. It is a Hamas front, and it's time to put it behind.
Now, as the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees faces funding suspensions, Norway, a top contributor to the UNRWA, has showed its concern towards the recent decision. The Nordic country has urged other nations to think about the consequences on the population in Gaza as they suffer from humanitarian crisis due to the conflict. Earlier on Sunday, Norway announced that it would maintain its funding to the UNRWA following accusations that some agency staff took part in the October 7th heinous attack, in contrast to several other countries that have paused their funding to the agency. Now, US President Joe Biden said on Tuesday that he has decided on how to respond to the drone attack that killed US service members in Jordan. President Biden said that he holds Iran responsible for the attack. However, he added that he does not think to have a wider war in West Asia.
I do hold them responsible in the sense that they're supplying the weapons to the people who did it. We'll have that discussion. I don't think we need a wider war in the Middle East. That's not what I'm looking for.
Now, as the US has indicated to retaliate after the killing of 3 American service members in Jordan, Iran has warned of serious response to any threat from Washington. Iranian Revolutionary Guards Chief Hossein Salami said that no threat will be left unanswered. Iran's envoy to the United Nations, Amir Saeed Iravani, also warned on Wednesday that Tehran would respond decisively to any attack on its territory and its interests. On to Europe now. Ukraine and Russia are scheduled to face off today at the International Court of Justice in the case related to Russia funding pro-Russian forces in eastern Ukraine. In Brussels, EU leaders will deliberate on continuing their funding to Ukraine. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, sadly, we still don't know when this war will end.
That's right, Tanvi, and European Union leaders, as a result, are proposing annual debates on Thursday on a planned €50 billion aid package for the Ukrainians. According to draft summit conclusions, the aid is to cover Ukraine's need for 3 years. Hungary has been pushing for an annual review with a veto right, which other EU members oppose. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell says that Ukraine needs more ammunition. EU defence ministers are expected to meet in Brussels to discuss supplies. DD India's Ishan Girg joins me now, I think, from Brussels to get more on this. Ishan, we've had some strong words from some European leaders towards their colleagues about Ukraine.
Absolutely. We are seeing a great deal of frustration within the European Union about how the countries are going to get, in the end, towards an agreement about a €50 billion package for Ukraine. The talks have been on hold. The talks have been rather delayed by several months now. Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban blocked the agreement back in December. Now there is some degree of conversation going on about how the countries can agree on a support package. Now, there have been allegations leveled by the Hungarian Prime Minister that Brussels is, in a sense, blackmailing Hungary, saying that they could erect financial blockades in the way of the country. These are allegations that not have been proven yet, but there seems to be a degree of frustration between the leaders because a massive chunk of the bloc is trying to get that package across the line, but so far that has proven to be difficult.
Yeah, and we've had those words from those 5 European leaders, including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Denmark's leader as well, saying that the European Union will fall short of its goal to send shells and that our efforts must not wither, they've said in a joint letter. So strong words and evidence of divisions indeed, Ishan. If the package does end up getting agreed, what will it look like?
Well, primarily what the countries are looking at is a 50 billion euro support package, which includes mostly civilian assistance. So it's designed to ensure that the Ukrainian government, its systems, they can continue functioning properly. But apart from that, there's also a discussion ongoing if the EU nations can agree to increase the ceiling of their spending that goes directly towards military aid by another 5 billion euros. And both of these discussions are likely to be up, and they're likely to be front and center when the leaders of the 27-nation bloc meet here on Thursday.
Ishan Gerg, live in Brussels for DD India. Thank you. Meanwhile, Ukraine and Russia are scheduled to face off at the International Court of Justice in a case related to Russian funding of pro-Russian forces in the east of Ukraine. Ukraine also says that Russia breached a UN anti-discrimination treaty by trying to erase the culture of ethnic Tatars and Ukrainians in Crimea. Russia denies systematic human rights abuses in Ukrainian territory that it occupies. Ukraine says it neutralized 14 out of 20 Russian drones in an overnight attack on 5 regions of the country. The Ukrainian military says 1 person was injured. Commercial buildings in the Mykolaiv region were damaged. The Air Force claims the drone used in the attacks were Iranian-made Shahed drones. At least 3 people, meanwhile, were injured in a drone attack in Kharkiv on Tuesday. Officials say that strike caused damage to apartment blocks and infrastructure. The Kharkiv regional governor said at least 6 drones had been deployed in the area. Thousands of French farmers have again blocked major highways leading in and out of Paris for a 3rd consecutive day. Farmers from across the country have surrounded the outskirts of the capital, blocking at least 7 highways with dozens of tractors. It's an intensifying standoff between farmers and the French government. The farmers are calling for better pay, fewer constraints on their work and lower costs. French farmers have expressed disappointment, though, with a speech delivered by the Prime Minister Gabriel Attal to lawmakers, with many saying his words will not amount to sufficient measures to address their anger.
Our agriculture is our strength and our pride. I say it here solemnly, there is and there must be an exception for French agriculture. I am lucid, faced with the piling up of standards, faced with decisions that fall through the cracks and falls through who knows where. Agriculture also has its doubts and is waiting for answers and solutions.
Spain's lower house has rejected an amnesty bill due to discrepancies in its scope between the ruling socialists and Catalan separatist parties. The bill, rejected by 179 votes to 171, will return for debate in a parliamentary committee now, and it could be sent back for a fresh vote in the lower house. The amnesty bill is set to define Sanchez's 2nd term and has prompted large protests against it. Last year, in exchange for parliamentary support from 2 small Catalan separatist parties, Sanchez agreed to put forward the bill, but the Catalan Junts voted against it after they failed to reach a last-minute deal with Sanchez's Socialist Workers' Party. United States National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says he agrees with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi that President Biden and President Xi should speak by telephone relatively soon. Sullivan met on the 26th and 27th of January with Wang in Bangkok. That meeting follows a key summit in San Francisco in November, where US President Joe Biden and Chinese leader Xi Jinping agreed to work to curb fentanyl production and export in a major breakthrough. Fentanyl is a highly addictive synthetic opioid, 50 times more potent than heroin. Sullivan recognized recent progress in resuming military-to-military communication and the importance of maintaining those channels open.
We agreed that President Biden and President Xi should speak and should speak by telephone relatively soon. I think the acknowledgement coming out of Woodside that there really is no substitute for leader-to-leader conversation. Yeah, I mean, it became so apparent over the course of that meeting in Woodside how central that ingredient has to be to an effective stewardship of U.S.-China policy. And so both of us agreed that we would report back to our leaders and we would get them on the phone sooner rather than later.
An Argentine court has overturned labor rules proposed by President Javier Milei that would make it easier to fire workers. The appeals court already temporarily suspended the new president's regulations in early January after a legal challenge brought by the main union. The three-judge panel ruled the regulations were unconstitutional, saying that the government went beyond its authority and that they first need to be approved by Congress. Tanvi, back to you.
So much. Pleasure having you, Ollie. Ollie Barrett joining us all from London. Still to come on DD India Global. Sri Lankan police uses water cannons, tear gas on protesters opposing steep tax hikes and economic crisis in the island nation. Long-lost portrait of the Fräulein Lisa by Austrian artist Gustav Klimt found in Vienna after almost a century.
In a world that never stops, where information shapes our reality, one app stands out, helps you stay ahead of time. Introducing the DD India app, your gateway to a world of news right at your fingertips. Your most trusted source of news goes global, goes digital. Explore a world of options, top stories, live updates, in-depth analysis, and more. Stay informed wherever you are. Real-time alerts keep you ahead of the curve always. The DD India app, connecting you to the world one story at a time. Download now and explore the world of knowledge, insights, and authentic information.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I am Tanvi Taneja. Next updates from New Delhi. Parliament of India's budget session commenced on Wednesday with India's President Draupadi Murmu's address to the joint sitting of both the houses. The President entered the House with the Sengol being carried in front of her. She was followed by Speaker Om Birla, Upper House Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is the Sengol being carried in front of her. In her address, President Murmu said that the government has enlarged the role of daughters everywhere in land, water, sky and space.
नारी शक्ति का सामर्थ्य बढ़ाने के लिए मेरी सरकार हर स्तर पर काम कर रही है। इस वर्ष की गणतंत्र दिवस परेड भी नारी शक्ति के लिए समर्पित थी। मेरी सरकार ने महिलाओं की आर्थिक भागीदारी बढ़ाने के लिए निरंतर प्रयास किए हैं। आज लगभग 10 करोड़ महिलाएं स्वयं सहायता समूह से जुड़ चुके हैं। इन समूहों को 8 लाख करोड़ रुपया बैंक लोन और 40,000 करोड़ रुपया की आर्थिक सहायता दी गई है।
India's Upper House Chairman Jagdeep Dhankar also addressed the joint sitting session and said that the government has made India one of the leading digital economy that has provided employment to millions of youths.
My government has made India one of the world's leading digital economies. This has provided employment to crores of youth. My government is continuously taking new initiatives for the education and skill development of India's youth. For this, a new national education policy was framed and is being implemented rapidly. My government also wants to make India a leading destination for meetings and exhibitions related sectors. For this, Facilities like Bharat Mandapam, Yashobhumi have been created. In near future, tourism will become a major source of employment.
Earlier on Wednesday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi addressed media before start of the budget session. The Indian Prime Minister exuded confidence that India's journey of inclusive and comprehensive development will continue, propelled by the blessings of Indians.
इस बार एक दिशा निर्देशक बातें लेकर के देश की वित्त मंत्री निर्मला जी हम सबके सामने कल अपना बजट पेश करने वाली है। साथियों, मुझे विश्वास है कि देश नित्य प्रगति की नई नई ऊंचाइयों को पार करता हुआ आगे बढ़ रहा है। सर्वस्पर्शी विकास हो रहा है, सर्वांगीण विकास हो रहा है, सर्वसमावेशक विकास हो रहा है। ये यात्रा जनता जनार्दन के आशीर्वाद से निरंतर बनी रहेगी।
Now, in neighbouring Pakistan, in a major development, former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Khan have been sentenced to 14 years in jail for the illegal sale of state gifts. The court's decision also includes a 10-year ban on holding public office for Khan. This marks the first sentencing for Bushra Khan, and it comes after Imran Khan's recent 10-year jail term for disclosing state secrets. These verdicts unfold just a week before the upcoming national elections in Pakistan. The Baloch Liberation Army, BLA, has initiated a massive joint strike named Operation Dare Bolan in the city of March. The joint operation team includes its suicide unit, Majid Brigade, most lethal STOS, Special Tactical Operations Squad, Fateh Squad and Intelligence Wing. The operation has reportedly resulted in extensive damage targeting military and security installations and appealed locals to stay in their homes. Staying within the region, Colombo police fired tear gas and water cannons on protesters opposing the steep tax increase and economic crisis in Sri Lanka. About 10,000 protesters joined the demonstration called by the main opposition party, the United People's Power Party, also protesting against the high cost of living after the government declared bankruptcy in April 2022. Sri Lanka's opposition leader Sajith Premadasa joined the protesters and blasted the government for imposing the most inhumane pressure on the people and pushing 22 million people into starving. The island nation is facing a dire economic crisis while it prepares for the presidential elections later this year. The Maldives Prosecutor General Hussein Shamim has been attacked by unidentified miscreants in the capital city of Malé. According to police, the incident took place when Prosecutor General was on his way to work. Shamim, who was appointed by the Maldivian Democratic Party government, is being treated at a hospital and it's reported that his condition is stable. Taiwan's defense minister on Wednesday said that Chinese warplanes and warships often carry out joint combat readiness patrols, but China suddenly turns one of its regular drills around the island into an actual attack. Taipei reported another such patrol on Wednesday involving 22 Chinese aircraft. Now, after North Korea released the still photographs of the state's latest missile test, concerns over its possible interference in April's parliamentary elections has risen in South Korea. President Yoon Suk-yeol has warned that North Korea could stage provocations such as armed actions near the shared border, drone intrusions, cyber attacks, or spreading fake news. Meanwhile, South Korea's opposition leader Lee Jae-myung has called for the government to restore the inter-Korea hotlines, as Lee has criticized Yoon's hardline North Korea policy. The latest test for the missile, called Hwasal-2, marks the third time Pyongyang has tested cruise missiles in less than a week. Now we take a look at what else is happening around the world. Malaysia's Sultan Ibrahim from the southern state of Johor was sworn in as the country's new king on Wednesday. Sultan Ibrahim's accession as king comes amid renewed political tensions in Malaysia. While the monarchy plays a mostly ceremonial role in Malaysia, its influence has grown in recent years, prompting the king to wield rarely used discretionary powers to quell political instability. A column of flame shot into the sky in western Oklahoma overnight after a gas pipeline exploded. Emergency responders from various agencies, including the fire department from Texas, arrived at the site to douse the flame. While the cause remains unclear, officials have recommended avoiding the area for safety. The situation requires shutting down natural gas pipelines and depressurizing the affected section. Austrian artist Gustav Klimt's long-lost portrait of Fräulein Lisa has been found in Vienna after almost a century. The painting, which belonged to a Jewish family in Austria, will now be auctioned on April 24th this year and is expected to be fetched by over $54 million. This rediscovery of the painting is considered to be a sensation and a representation of the painter's rarity and artistic significance. An annual horse race was held at the foot of the snowy Tian Shan Mountains in China's northwestern Xinjiang region. As nearby ethnic groups celebrate the approach of the Chinese New Year, the race was attended by over 100 local herdsmen. Traditional riding skills and activities of the local Kazakh ethnic group were featured on the sidelines of the competition. Back in India, tourists thronged the hill towns as a fresh spell of snow covered parts of the Himalayan states in pristine sheet of white on Wednesday. Tourists were seen engaging in outdoor winter activities such as snow fighting, pony riding and many more as business owners in the region welcomed crowds after a lull season. The India Meteorological Department has forecast better precipitation over the western Himalayan region until next week, with peak intensity on Wednesday and Thursday. That's it in this edition of DD India Global. Do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. We'll be back with another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Connect with us on Facebook, X, Instagram at DD India Live. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I am Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.